Hey Denchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of the debut album from the American DJ and producer Mayhem. This one is called 2083. Before I get too deeply into this review, I think it would be worthwhile to mention that I did not listen to Mayhem at all between the years 2014 and 2016. I actually found out about Mayhem through the Destroyed Invasion remix album, where he had a collaborative remix of the song Bounce with his close friend Antiserum. In fact, for the longest time I actually thought that Mayhem and Antiserum were a duo, because the next time I heard about them was in 2016 with their collaborative remix of Scoop by Barely Alive, which hit a lot of great markets. It was pretty successful. I actually made it onto Excision's 2016 mix compilation album, which was one of my favorite compilations of the year, so obviously this track kind of has a special place in my heart. But as I mentioned, I didn't actually know that Mayhem was a separate artist from Antiserum until this album itself was announced, and therefore I have a couple things I probably want to mention before I get into this review. You guys might know this, but I am very hesitant to review artists that I don't heavily follow, and that's primarily because 2 years ago when I first started doing these reviews, I basically got a lot of flack for really not knowing what I was talking about at certain times, so I kind of decided to only pursue doing reviews for artists that I was really familiar with, and that's why a lot of times I have difficulty when you guys suggest albums getting into that, because I want to make sure I have the proper background on these specific artists before I go into an in-depth review. And I guess with this review, it's kind of me trying to break out of that shell and be able to start reviewing things without having heavy background on them, and just get more into the research side of things, check out more tracks, check out the surrounding context of the album and everything before I dive into it. So I want to get more into those in the future, at least in areas where we don't have a lot of other albums to review, like very early in the year that is right now. I think this is one of the first electronic albums to release this year. And like I said, this album came as a total surprise, because I honestly didn't know that Mayhem was a solo artist. So when I saw this one in the pre-orders list on iTunes, I was very surprised to see it there, and I was anxious to dig into what it was, especially because I've been such a big fan of the trap genre in the last year or two. I used to be a trap hater, actually, back when it was first gaining steam in 2011, 2012, and then it seemed like trap was gaining a lot of momentum with all these different genres that they were incorporating. People started pushing boundaries with it. Future bass took off, which kind of incorporated with trap as well. So seeing a well-known name in the trap scene putting out an album was really exciting to me. And when this album released, I can't say I was too surprised with how my opinions on it went. Not being a hardcore fan, obviously, I felt myself feeling very neutral to a lot of the tracks on this album. But I do have to mention this for other listeners. If you've been a fan of trap from its early stages to what it is now, I think you're going to enjoy this album a lot. And that honestly is kind of refreshing to see, considering trap has been so heavily fueled by the future bass scene over these last couple years. Even though those genres really should be separate, it seems like future bass has had a very heavy influence on what has been called trap in more recent times. And it's cool because this album doesn't have that overwhelming influence. And of course it's going to come here and there on a couple different tracks, and a couple of my favorite tracks actually were kind of the ones that had more of the future bass influence, but it definitely does throw back to its founding stages. For example, Amazon and MNML. But like I already mentioned, some of the hybrids on this album are some of the better sounding spots on this entire record. Like the song Artificial with Swayze, kind of combining Drake's style of pop rap with trap and future bass, and I thought this song was especially cool because it kind of sounds like what modern future bass would have sounded like, to me at least, if it were made in like 2012. It's really, really cool, and you'd probably understand what I was talking about if you listened to it yourself, and I would definitely suggest you would, because this is probably my favorite jam on the record. There's some other really cool hybrid moments on this album as well, like on the collaboration with Nas Tokyo and 12th Planet called On Heaven. The song even kind of throws back to when dubstep was first getting popular, and obviously with that 12th Planet influence, it was going to sound something like this. I definitely say there's a bit of hard dance influence in here as well, although the drop that's more hard dance oriented, I'd say kind of killed this song for me, just because it sounds very, very empty. I don't know what happened with the audio spectrum on this song, but it just doesn't sound full to me, which kind of killed it. Otherwise, I think it's a great song. Basically what I'm trying to get at is I didn't absolutely hate this album, and that's probably because it incorporates so many more styles than the old blend of trap that I really wasn't crazy about. He goes into dubstep, he goes into some bounce sounding satisfying things, like on the song Back Up, and it's been a long time since I've actually liked something that was really bouncy, but this one was really fun. It incorporates trap in a great way, in my opinion. There are a couple moments at the very end of this album, though, where he's really trying hard to incorporate a little bit of a funk sound, and I think that didn't really work in his favor. I understand the whole, like, people want to expand and put these hybrid genres out there, and a great example of an artist who's done that is Haywire, combining jazz with electronic music, and obviously he's kind of going for a similar thing here, combining trap and funk music, and I just don't think these two genres really blend well together at all. The clear piece of the album that did that was the song Funk Will Never Die, obviously, and that one's arguably one of my least favorites on this record, but it obviously came back as well on the 10th track on this album, which I thought made a very odd closer. In fact, it contained so much energy in it that I was very surprised when the song just ended and then there wasn't a song after it. I listened to this album all at once, and I was just very confused at where this album ended. In fact, I think the song A Moment for Andrew would have made a much better closer, leaving listeners kind of on maybe a little bit more of an emotional, tense kind of situation, whereas Reactor I just feel like was a really sudden and blunt end to the album. I didn't think this song was bad, I didn't think it was terrible, anything like that. I just think it had its wrong placement on this record. It could have come in much better earlier inside of it. I should probably also mention that the album's title track, which is the first song on this album, kind of sets up the album very poorly in terms of it doesn't really describe what we're going to be getting with the album. I was expecting something very different when hearing the harsh melodies coming in on this first track, and really the melodic approach was not a big theme on the rest of this album. In fact, it seemed a lot more scattered because this song sets up the album in such a way. It was really hard to get through this thing in some ways just because of how the first couple tracks went. And I'm once again going to apologize to fans of Mayhem who may be watching this album review, just because I don't really know the context very well of Mayhem's career, so it's very hard to kind of judge this thing. But this being his debut album and him kind of being a trap producer that's been more oriented around singles, I feel like I could have tackled this one solidly, and I hope a lot of people kind of feel the same way about this thing that I do. I didn't absolutely love it, but I didn't think it was a terrible album. I definitely don't think it was bad. There's a lot of great gems on this thing. I really liked the classic dubstep hybrids on this, and the more future-oriented hybrids. I think there were a lot of really great moments on this album, but I think it ended up being a pretty average cut in the end. For Mayhem's 2083, I am feeling a solid 4 out of 10. If you haven't listened to this album yet, make sure to check it out. I have the Spotify link in the description. I would definitely suggest going to check out my favorites, because there are some good ones on this record. As always, I'm Landon Remixes. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I will see you later. Peace.